Welcome to this episode of Relatively Famous, the podcast where I, Chip White, interview relatives of famous people. My famous relative, Vanna White of Wheel of Fortune. Yep, that's my sister. So that's why I have this podcast where I talk to other relatives. On today's show, we're talking to James Tomlinson, who is the son of David Tomlinson, the actor from Mary Poppins. He played Mr. Banks, and among other, I think like 120 other acting things. Really well known. And this is the first one we're doing that's actually taking place over in the UK. So we're going across the pond for today's episode, which is really cool to me. Hopefully we'll pick up some European listeners. And speaking of across the pond, let's go to the ocean side and thank our sponsor. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com, visitmyrtlebeach.com. If you're looking for a great family vacation, go to Myrtle Beach, the whole area up and down the coast, 60 miles, amazing beach, 2,000 restaurants, I think 90 golf courses. You can scuba dive, you can surf. There's all kind of great things to do there. You can even see my childhood home. And you can learn all about that at visitmyrtlebeach.com. If you happen to be traveling with an autistic or sensory sensitive traveler, you can check out Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock and learn more about that on visitmyrtlebeach.com. And, we're coming to you from a comic book shop here in San Antonio. A little bit of description. It's full of older comics. It's got deer heads on the wall. There's open beam ceiling. It's an old building that was made from a kind of a speakeasy kind of comic book shop. It's not your typical strip mall comic book shop. And all that being said, let's welcome James Tomlinson.
Relatively Famous podcast with Chip White.
James, welcome to Relatively Famous. I'm so excited to have you on today. And you're my first guest from across the pond.
Oh, right. Long way. We're a long way away. Of course, I know the States a little bit. I've got a daughter in Kansas who's married with 6 children, 6 youngish American children. So I have contact with the States, and of course I used to go to California when I was very young, and I've been a few times off my own bat as well.
Yeah,
my first, yeah.
Now,
so I have visited.
Excellent. So I had a loyal viewer. I said, hey, if you have a question for James, send it to me. And since you said you've been to California a couple times, I'm just going to start with his question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So he says, James, today less than 40 people can say they've met Walt Disney. Having your father being asked by Walt to voice 4 different characters, what's it like to tell your children what Walt was like?
I was a bumptious 7-year-old when I met Walt in 1963. Remember, he didn't live all that much longer after the making of Poppins. So my dad got the call in 1963. I'll go back a little bit because it's quite interesting. Everyone, there's so many people say to my father, well, how did it happen? How did you meet him? And in 1959, he was in a play called The Ring of Truth at the Savoy Theatre, a successful play. And the front of house manager came backstage one night and said, oh, Walt Disney's out front. My dad said, oh, yeah, sure. He said, no, Walt Disney's out front. And at the end of the curtain came down at the end, and Dad was in his dressing room, and through his dressing room door came Walt Disney, very, very formal, called him Mr. Tomlinson. Thought you were very good in the play, and then said, would you have dinner with me? And so they went and had dinner, and they chatted, and it was very nice, and talked quite a lot about all sorts of different things. Would you like to come back for a drink? They went back to the famous Dorchester Hotel where Walt was staying. They had a drink, and Dad thought, well, what does he want? Surely there's a point to all this. And the next thing, he finds himself being ushered into the lift, Walt saying, well, it's very nice to meet you. I hope we meet again. And Dad was going down in the lift and thought, what the hell was all that about? Well, 4 years later, it wasn't until 4 years later that he got the call for Poppins. And Bill Walsh, the producer of Mary Poppins, said that Walt's planning, or Dad would say it himself, his meticulous planning for everything and his meticulous research. He was very much very, very hands-on guy. Very, very formal. But we met him as a family. So Dad arrived, obviously went off to work on his own as he preferred to do. He didn't take family. Working was a very serious business. He was there to make a movie. He didn't think any differently to the previous 36, 40 movies he'd already made in his career. So he was a veteran, a film actor when he went to work for Walt Disney. And at the end of the filming, towards the end of the filming, Walt said to him, "Why don't you bring the family out?" And Dad said, "Oh, well, really?" And he said, "Well, yeah, you ought to bring them out," because they'd spoken. I have a brother who's autistic, and Walt had shown a special interest in William, my brother William. And he said, "Well, why don't you bring the family out while he's here? If the specialists in London say he's deaf, I can get him checked out at our clinic." Now, Walt and Spencer Tracy had started the first clinic for the deaf in America, and they're all over the States now. They're called the John Spencer Clinics, and John was the son of Spencer Tracy, and he was deaf. And so Walt arranged, at the moment we all arrived, William was taken to the John Spencer clinic. They saw him for about obviously not 5 minutes, but very quickly they said, there might be something wrong. He's definitely not deaf. And something my mum already knew. I think a mum would know whether their child was deaf anyway, and these ridiculous specialists in London hadn't got it right. But anyway, so that was Walt's interest. He took a very special interest in William. And he owed my dad absolutely nothing at the end of filming. My dad had been treated like royalty when he was there. He'd been terribly well looked after by the studio, by Walt, by everybody. And he really didn't owe my dad anything, but we had a 6-week holiday on Walt at the end of filming. Dad was still doing a little bit. He was doing some of the voices, a bit of post-syncing, that sort of thing. We had this fantastic house in the hills above Burbank. And we found ourselves, going back to the question, what was it like to meet Walt Disney? I was with my brother, David, now a judge, who's 9. He was 9 at the time. I was 7. And we were standing bang in front of Walt's desk. And he was literally 3-4 feet away from me. My parents were behind me. We were chatting away. And Walt said, have you, we'd been to Disneyland on him. We'd been to his ranch. We'd been here, there, everywhere. We'd been given the most fantastic time. And he looked at my mum and he said, "Have you been to Palm Springs?" And Mum said, "No." He said, "You must go to Palm Springs." And he said, "Chuck will fly you." And I said, "Chuck? Who? What do you mean, Chuck?" He said, "No, you'll go in my aeroplane." And on his desk, there was a model of an aeroplane. And I said, is that your aeroplane? And he said, "Yes." And because he was Walt Disney and I was 7 years old, I said, "Magic it bigger." I actually thought that was the aeroplane. And he was absolutely delighted. And he looked at me and he said, "The room's too small." But he was so thrilled. I mean, he actually grabbed my dad a few days later and said, "I love that little moment with Jamie in my office when he said, magic it bigger." And of course, Disney, magic, you see, he loved that little bit of magic. It was quite funny because when we were coming back in, my dad was a very experienced, he'd flown a lot he was in the RAF in the Second World War. So Chuck and they dual flew the aircraft together. I think Chuck let Dad do most of the flying. But when we were coming back into LA to land, I did say to Chuck, make sure I'm not in the aeroplane when Walt magics back into his office.
That's
So
funny.
I have met Walt Disney. And it's quite something. I feel we weren't spoiled children. We led a very normal home life, but we did meet some special people from time to time.
Now
Walt was one of them. He was exceptional. And the other thing I have to say about Walt was we used to get enormous parcels at Christmas sent to the house in England, and there'll be 3 gifts in each one for us boys. There were 4 boys, and there'll be three lovely presents in each one. And my mum always said, "Oh, it's from the studio. It's the studio who are doing this." Well, the moment Walt died, it stopped. So it was Walt who was doing it.
Wow. Yeah. I think he had a reputation of being very, like you said, very personal, very hands-on, and not just.
As I said, he was formal. He was terribly formal with my dad. My dad was Mr. Tomlinson. He never called him David or anything like that. Everybody else in the studio did, but Walt was very formal with him, very warm, very Dad was treated like royalty, and when we arrived as a family, Walt treated us like royalty as well. We really were. We really were given the most fantastic time. Wasn't quite the same organization, I don't think, after he left, although strangely enough, my dad went back a couple more times to do 2 further movies, and it was more or less the same team in place with Bill Walsh as producer, who was a lovely man.
Yeah, I think your dad probably in America.
In
In America, your dad's probably best known as Mr. Banks on Mary Poppins and for The Love Bug.
Yeah, and Bedknobs, I suppose, Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yep, those that. Now in England, were those movies as big as they were here? Did it kind of change his career?
I mean, they were. I think all 3 movies. I mean, certainly. Yes, I mean, he didn't think. I mean, terrible thing to say, but he thought he told a terrible story of watching the rushes of Mary Poppins, sitting next to Walt at Burbank in the studios, watching the rushes, and he looked at it. He thought, this is absolutely sentimental rubbish, and he nearly said to, "Dear darling Walt, you can't win them all." And he couldn't have been more wrong. Thank God he wasn't a producer. Of course, he was absolutely thrilled to, he came back and he was looking, he went straight back into the theatre, carried on doing his stuff. But of course, with the enormous success of the film, and actually, as time has gone on, his role in the film has been more and more recognised as actually the pivotal thing in the film. And I do think he's very, very, he was very, very good in it. It wouldn't have been the same without him, I don't think.
Yep. Now let's talk about you for a second.
Oh God, there's nothing to talk about me.
Oh yeah. So what was it like? I'm going to assume you're hitting your teenage years, your tweens. What was it like in London, late 60s through the 70s for you? Because, for me in the States, it's going to be a different world.
We lived in the country. We lived outside London, although Dad had a small apartment there. We lived outside London. I moved to London, I suppose, when I was about 19 and started work. It was a much less frenetic world then than it is now, with the amount of communications there are now and the amount of pressure. I think there's a great deal more pressures on youngsters today than there were then. It was fine. It was good. I mean, the thing, what my dad and mum taught, we never dined out on having, theatrical parents. So we never talked about it, or it took quite a long time for friends to know, or if we knew people, it certainly wasn't an introductory line or anything like that. We never really, privacy was good, was quite important to us. So we try to be, I thank my parents for the normal upbringing we had.
Now, the English and the music, English invasion. Are you a big music fan? Were you thrilled with?
Yeah, a little bit. Not huge. I mean, I was a great Supertramp fan. Rory Gallagher. Obviously, the older bands like the Stones. I like Santana. I like Cat Stevens. I'm a big Dylan fan. Always have been. So it hasn't really moved on. I haven't really moved on from then. All my music now is still very much based on the music I was listening to then. Pink Floyd, The Doors. So that's about sort of my era, really. So quite a lot of American there.
Yeah. Now you're 19. You moved to the city. What did you go do for work? What was life like as a 19 moving from the country to London?
Oh, don't. I mean, my working life was absolutely bizarre. I'm not sure. I worked at Buckingham Palace to start with. So I was working for the Queen, capital T, capital Q. I got a job there. I'd done reasonably well at school. It was the last thing I should have done. It was a hell of a lot of clerical, dressing up in very smart suits. And of course, being exactly the same size as my father then, I could have all his old Savile Row hand-me-downs. So I was in the finest suits and shoes. I had the same foot size as well, so I'd stole all his wonderful clothes and shirts and everything. So I had I had about a year there, I suppose, but it just wasn't. Sitting behind a desk wasn't for me. But it was something I wouldn't have missed. Let's put it that way.
Well, I can't say I don't.
Working for the royal household.
Yeah, I can say I don't know anyone who I've ever met that's worked for the Queen. So, especially at 19, that had to have been quite an introduction to the working world.
Well, it was. I mean, we were in. It was a lot more formal then, and there was a terrific hierarchy. I was much more comfortable playing. I don't want to say football because you won't understand football. I'm talking about soccer. I was much happier playing soccer with the cooks and footmen than hanging around with the people I was supposed to be hanging around with. So the royal household had a football team, and I think I was the only. It was so hierarchical. I was an official. They were household. It was all very, very strange. But I found myself much more comfortable at weekends playing soccer with the household than I did with. We had very, very fancy kit. Yeah. We had very, very smart shirts with the royal household emblem and in the royal colours. So if you see jockeys racing, we had very similar colours to what jockeys would wear if they were riding one of the Queen's horses.
Okay. Now,
at the time, yeah.
My wife and son and I, we went to London for the Olympics in
2012.
2012. Fabulous job, and hats off to England for such a phenomenal job hosting them. And we did some of the tourist things. If I was to land tomorrow in Heathrow and to meet you somewhere, what is something or a place or sentimental to you? Where would you take me in London that you would say I've got to show?
Oh, crikey! I would be much better in Paris, probably. Off the beaten. I'd probably be much better in Paris off the beaten track. I think London is such a sprawl. And it's somewhere where you need sort of public transport for. And you've got a smaller city like Paris, which is small enough to be able to just about walk. I mean, a big city, but it's small enough to be able to walk just about everywhere. London. I've you take people to all the sites, but there's nowhere. I suppose if you grow up, if you spend a lot of time somewhere, you there's a lot you miss. But I've taken my grandsons and my granddaughter from America. I've taken them on long walks. We've started at Hyde Park Corner, down Constitution Hill, past the Palace, through St James's Palace. We've walked through Green Park to up Pall Mall, Downing Street, tried to take them past Horse Guards Parade, and then taken them right down the embankment as well on both sides. My brother has a wonderful office overlooking Tower Bridge. He's a judge at a court in London. And his actual office overlooks the Thames, and it's quite spectacular. So I would always finish off by taking them to my brother's court.
That sounds like a lovely tour.
Yeah, and across the road from him is the Tower of London as well. So I do take. Well, we've done most of the major sites. You asked me about Paris, I could be a lot more detailed, but that would be we're following your nose once I give you a 2 points and to meander between 2 points in Paris. But that's where you see it. I'm talking about the real Paris, I suppose.
Yeah,
it's a big sprawl, London. It's such a big city. It is so enormous, as you know from visiting in 2012.
Yeah, and we went. We took the train, the Channel over to Paris for a couple of days because my wife.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and you're right. And we walked a lot. We also walked a lot. We were in Madrid a couple of years ago.
Oh, how lovely!
Yeah, we walked like 23,000 steps the first day, but we walked so much in Paris. My wife and son finally looked at me and said, "Can we take a cab?" So if we're in Paris, what is the
I always stay in a little hotel in the Quartier Latin, and I describe a route to people. If you take Place de la Bastide and you take l'Opéra, and you draw a line, straight line on one of those big walking maps, those lovely maps they do, draw a straight line, and then you zigzag through there. I avoid the avenues. Go and see the avenues. Go and see the grand avenues. Do all that. But if you want to see the real Paris, get off the, Latin Quarter, just south of the river, around the university area, and then Place de la Bastide. There's nothing there anymore because they pulled it down in the revolution. But Place de la Bastide, draw a line to l'Opéra, and then you can weave your way through, and you come across some charming spots. On your way through those narrow streets.
Now, you mentioned...
I'm like a tourist guide, aren't I?
It's very good. I'm taking mental notes on all this. Now, you mentioned your brother, William.
Yeah.
So Visit Myrtle Beach is our sponsor, and they promote Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock, which is about traveling with autistic and sensory-sensitive travelers.
Yeah.
Tell me about your brother and what they discovered after his visit with Walt. I mean, if you're comfortable with
it. I mean, after the visit with Walt, it was confirmation he wasn't deaf. Of course, we were there for only 6 weeks. He was a very beautiful boy of 3, so he was 4 years younger than me. He was only really happy in water, loved being in water, loved swimming, getting wet. We spent a hell of a lot of time in the pool we had, the house that Walt arranged. So we came home, and it was quite a long slog in the 1960s before he was finally diagnosed and this word autism came up. So he was probably about 7. We're talking about 4 years later with William having a pretty ghastly time and giving us all a fairly ghastly time as well. I mean, the frustration of not being able to speak, not being able to communicate. And we found my parents found a Montessori teacher who had been to America to learn about these children. She had a couple in London, and she went to America and she studied it. And it was really America that first got onto autism and first started to treat it. I mean, the trouble is, no two autistic people are the same. That they're all, the millions all over the world. They're all quite different. And a lady called Sybil Elgar, she started a school in Ealing, and William went there at the age of 7, would you believe, as a weekly boarder, because we didn't live in London. It was essential that that's the only way he could go. And his life changed almost immediately. The frustrations left. He started to communicate. He started to, words started to form. I mean, today he's 65, and his language is, he has difficulty communicating language-wise, and he's not safe to go outside the gate. But within the home, he comes here every 5 weeks for about 10 days. He's been adopted by my wife. But otherwise, he's under the umbrella of the National Autistic Society in a county called Somerset in the southwest. He just, from going to Sybil age 7, just has continued to develop, has continued to grow. Even now at 65, when I'm going downhill fast, he's continuing to, develop new skills, become more comfortable in himself. He's the easy. My wife said if every house guest was like William, she would have house guests. But most of them she would like, them to leave immediately. They arrive. But William is absolutely independent, tidy, no trouble. He's easy. He has wonderful skills. I don't know what the expression is in the States for what we would call a top woodworker, a cabinet maker. A cabinet maker is somebody who can make finite things out of wood, as opposed to a joiner. I'm a joiner, or a carpenter, who's the most simple form of woodwork. Then there's joinery, which is you're very good at making windows and fitting windows and all that sort of thing. I could do a little bit of the work William does, but it would take me a long time. William is finite cabinet making. I mean, really, really very, very special indeed. And he's got, we share a big workshop in the garden. The first thing I did when my mum sold the family home, she came up and joined us for a little while. She's still alive and had to be taken care of locally, very locally, thank goodness, here. But the first thing I did was to build a very large workshop for both of us in this garden here. So, and William, when he's home, he'll spend most of his day up there with all his lathes and machines and his tools and making the most incredible furniture, the most incredible stuff.
Wow.
And I'm allowed a little space on one side. So he's artistic. He paints. He writes the most incredibly meticulous diary with beautiful writing. He writes a whole page every day of what he's been doing that day. It's not. It's more events rather than anything else. Get up 7 o'clock, porridge, this, that, the other. Who he's had lunch with, when he's gone to the shed, when he's come in for lunch, when he's had coffee, when he's had tea, when he's who's visited. I mean, quite social. He'll be very keen to see people. But the moment they've arrived, that's it. He'll give them a big hello, and then he doesn't want to sit and talk to them or anything like that. He'll come in and remind them he's there. But I'd been away, I think, for 2.5 years when I was in my 20s, and he was told I was coming home, and so I was driving back to my parents' house, having been away for a couple of years, and I arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning. There was this redhead. He's a redhead going from window to window around the house as I pulled in. And I thought, well, I'm going to crikey. I got a big welcome from William. And all I got was, hello, Jamie, see you in the morning. Went shot up to bed. That was it. That's all he wanted to say. Just wanted to see me, say hello, let me see you in the morning.
That's
Shot up
hilarious.
to bed. Absolutely no flies on him at all. I'm
That's
missing out one other brother. I have the youngest who's Henry. Is Henry? He's in the industry. He's a first AD. He's produced a first AD, first assistant
yep.
director in movies, and which of course you know. He's produced and he's directed as well. So yeah. So there's with my eldest brother, who's a lawyer and now a judge. So that's theatrical as far as I'm concerned, although he's not theatrical. And of course, my little brother, he's very much in the biz. So. And I'm very, very interested in film and theatre and actors and performers and people who work behind the cameras and all that sort of thing. So I know a little bit about it from having been brought up with it and having worked a little bit in the industry myself. So I do love all that.
Now, you mentioned your wife. Describe your first date with her.
Oh, Sally. Well, the lovely thing about Sally was I had a not a very good first marriage, which I think one's allowed one. If you have two, then you're and you fail, then I think you need shooting. But sorry, crikey, I didn't really mean that. But we were friends for a long time before anything happened. So we actually got to know each other very, very well before. And we both had daughters my youngest daughter. I think we met when my youngest daughter was 4. Her youngest daughter was 4. They're now both 30, coming up to 36. So it's been quite some time. And it took a long time. We didn't really, we were worried about, she was separated. I was in the throes of being separated. And so we were friends for a long time before anything romantic happened. I did fancy her, I have to say, but I mean that wasn't a lot. But we let our girls, our little girls, we let them grow up a little bit before we went to the. So it was quite a controlled. Romance to start with.
Yep.
No mistakes made.
No, my wife, we've been together 30 plus years. We're friends before we start dating, and it's my second one. So I get what you're saying. Now we're running out of time because I try to stay around 30 minutes.
I'm sorry.
This is fabulous, man. You're amazing. What is the one question that I didn't ask, or something that you always kind of forget to tell people that you really wish you had shared?
I haven't asked you. I feel terrible. I haven't asked you any questions at all. So I'm going to have to find out all about you. I now know exactly what you've got your lovely Facebook page, which I visited occasionally, haven't I?
No, thank you. Yes, yes, thank you.
And you've sent me nice messages. We've sent each other nice messages.
Yep. We have. That's how we communicated. That's how we hooked up. Thank you.
I also I started a Facebook page for my dad. I don't know, a little while ago, and so that's probably how we found each other. I think. Possibly.
Yes, it was. Someone told me, I should look you up, and I did. And I was actually the gentleman who asked the question. So that did it. And I'm going to tag your dad's Facebook page when we share your episode and stuff too.
Oh,
by the way.
There's two. I mean, it's been actually a heartwarming few years for us because the bizarre thing about my dad's career, if I can just explain very quickly, is if you think that somebody retired in 1979, died in 2000, yet 25 years 26 years after his death and over 40 years since he last worked, his star somehow still shines. And that we find, I find that rather heartwarming, really. Just before COVID, about a year and a half before COVID, my brother called me and said, they're doing a play about Dad. And I went, that's got to be an April Fool. And so with this astonishing experience of actually my dad, a one-man play about his life, somebody had read his biography, his autobiography, Luckier Than Most, a lovely, brilliant writer called James Kettle. And the fantastic actor, Miles Jupp, agreed to play my dad in the one-man show. And so there was a big tour, and it went into the West End, into London. And my dad finally trod the boards of one of the few theatres he didn't play in his long career in the theatre, which was the Wyndham's Theatre. And then immediately after that, a biography was written as well. So we're talking about over 40 years. So as well as his own autobiography, there's a new biography which fills in all the gaps that he didn't put in his own autobiography. So there's a couple of nice books if anyone wants to know anything. His own autobiography published in 1991. That's been republished as well. So if anyone wants to know a little bit more about him, they're all available. They're both available on Amazon as well. So
we'll put links to them in our show notes.
No profits for me. But they're out there. I don't own the copyright.
But we'll put links in the show notes. Well, James, I am so grateful that you took your time today. I know there's a huge time difference between San Antonio and London, so I'm grateful for your time today. And
what time is it with you?
It is at this moment 1:09 p.m.
Oh, right. Lunchtime.
Yep, lunchtime. And we're going to go to lunch. So, James, thank you for your time today.
It was a pleasure. I love talking to you. And please let me know if you're ever in London again with your wife.
I absolutely will, because I definitely want to go back. You know, we saw a lot during the Olympics. I'd like to go back on a normal
No, definitely.
visit.
Please let me know. I'd love to pop down and see you.
Absolutely.
See you and your wife.
Terrific.
And any of your children you bring. You've got a son, you said.
I do. He's 26, and he loved London. He loved Paris, and we will definitely. If you're in San Antonio, mi casa, su casa.
Brilliant.
Thank you, James.
Lovely to talk to you, Chip.
Oh man, what a lovely conversation. I love the accent. I love hearing about his dad. I implore you to Google David Tomlinson and what a career he had. And like you said, he stopped working and spent time with his family at an amazing time in his career. So James, thank you for being here. I want to thank you, the viewer, the listener, for tuning in. Without you, I don't have a podcast, or I have one, but no one listening. So thank you for your time. I'm humbled that you want to spend it with us. I want to thank our sponsor. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. For an amazing family vacation, please go to Myrtle Beach, the hometown of me and my sister and tons of other people. There's golf, there's surfing, there's scuba diving, amazing restaurants, tons of family things to do. And again, if you have an autistic or sensory sensitive traveler with you, check out Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock and learn more about that at visitmyrtlebeach.com. I want to thank Nelco Media for producing our podcast. I want to thank Nelco Comics, the working comic book shop here in San Antonio, for this cool location. And if you happen to be related to someone famous or know someone famous that might be on the show, reach out to me at podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. That's podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.